What have you got anything for the cold open?
Ah, not really. I watched it stoned, so I wasn't really thinking. That might be why. That's why I didn't take down any notes.
I mean, to be fair, I watched it like 2 hours ago, and I've had to be checking what I wrote down because I don't recall it at all. Because I watched an episode of One Piece afterwards, which is just significantly better.
Should we just put this in as the cold open?
Yeah, all right then. Podcasts. A Frontier. These are the voyages of the podcast Captain Slug. Its ongoing mission to explore strange new episodes, to seek out new jokes and new references, to split infinitives that no one has split before. Captain Slog, Stardate 71. These are the continued voyages and what have you. I'm Eddie, that's Mark. Mark, how you been?
Yeah, I'm alright. What do you think is the superior volcano movie? Dante's Peak or Volcano?
It's Dante's Peak. Dante's Peak is literally Emma's favourite movie. If I was to lodge a contrary opinion, I would be kicked out.
Hey, the thing that Dante's Peak really has going for it, I don't know...
It's Brosnan.
It's Brosnan, right? It's not just Brosnan. Well, Brosnan, he's really sexy in it. He's like a super sexy scientist. Like, he wore glasses in the 90s when that wasn't really the thing. Like, sexy specs and all that. Like, he is great. But his in the backstory of his character, his wife was killed by a volcano. And that's why he doesn't like it. Now, Tommy Lee Jones's character does not have that. However, I don't... Now, this might displace quite a large section of our audience. I don't give a fuck about small towns. Small towns exist for Godzilla to step on, right? I do not care. But LA, that's a real problem you've got on your hands there, because then Thingy's husband in Fargo, he jumps on the lava and he melts, doesn't he?
Yeah.
And that scene alone makes Volcano the superior volcano movie. Because the bit where the granny gets in the lake and she melts, I mean, yeah, that's all right, but... No,
you see, but I admire the boldness of Dante's Peak with going with the, okay, we're making a volcano movie, what are we going to do? And somebody goes lava, and they go, no, it's a cliche. What we're going to do is the pyroclastic cloud. Boom!
I mean, you know that way that, like, you could, like... Because right, so I am, as you probably can tell from this podcast, I consider myself a kind of pop culture historian. Like, if there was a thing that I was maybe not an expert in, but if there was a thing where I'm like, I can back up all of my opinions on this with something that I have read or something that I can show you. I'd say it's kind of the history of pop culture.
I think that's true of both of us. I think it's the equivalent of like, right, like there are people who are really into like the American Civil War and they go visit the Civil War battlefields.
Yeah.
Right. Pop culture doesn't have battlefields, but if it did, those would be the places that I'd visit and just go, this is the site where Armageddon cruelly destroyed Deep Impact. The box office. Before the great Ants Bugs Life War of
yeah. If pop culture did have a battlefield, it would be with random facts that people should know about, right? Because as well as being obsessed just with pop culture itself, one of the things that I find really obsessive about, and Laura will tell you this, I bring this conversation up several times a week, which is basically, essentially it boils down to, do you think the kids today are into this, right? But what I really mean is generations from the baby boomers, because that's kind of where it started, we are defined by our pop culture more than we are defined by our actual culture in a lot of ways. And it's things like you could, if you got any millennial, right, and I'm talking a regular millennial, usually a guy, someone like us, someone who at least was the tiniest bit nerdy, or who at least watched movies and TV enough to take it in, and you pointed to the sky and you went, "Find me Orion's belt," they'd find it because it's in Men in Black, right? They know it. It's literally the only thing that we know about space. But pyroclastic flow. There isn't a millennial alive who couldn't tell you what pyroclastic flow is. Because everyone saw at least one of those movies. I just, even when I was a little boy, I was like, oh, LA's in danger. Oh man, we need to do something about this. And then it was Dante's Peak's in danger. Don't give a fuck, mate.
You know what they should do a disaster movie of? Because there's this like theory that one of the Canary Islands or something, there's an island somewhere in the Atlantic that like half of it could just fall into the sea at any moment, and the resulting tidal wave would wipe out the eastern seaboard. Now that's a movie I'd go watch.
Yeah. Learn something about tidal waves. There aren't enough disaster movies being made for today's Gen Z kids to know enough about what to be afraid of. Now,
no.
Okay, they know enough about being really afraid of climate change.
No, here's the thing. The industry behind the disaster movie, and by industry I do mean Roland Emmerich. Yeah. Right? He disappeared up his own arse, and he isn't satisfied with doing a what if, like, New York fell over, right? That's not good enough for him. Now he's got to do what if the moon attacked, right? And the answer is it won't, because that's stupid.
Other than Independence Day 2, which was a mistake.
Yeah.
I will defend every Roland Emmerich movie to the death.
What, including Moonfall?
I really liked Moonfall. No, I didn't like Moonfall. I that would be an inaccurate way of, that would be a reductive way of describing my experience. I really enjoyed watching Moonfall at the IMAX with two of my best friends, and there was 3 other people in the audience, and we'd just seen Jackass 4. Okay. It was like 2 p.m. on a Wednesday afternoon, and we were about 3 pints down, and it was the funniest thing I've ever seen.
I enjoyed Moonfall in a way, and let me explain that way. I have seen one movie at the cinema more times than any other film, and that movie is The Room. Now, I exist in a society where I have access to, when it comes to cinema, pretty much everything. Like, if like I can gain access, I can like literally fire up my phone, and within 5 minutes, I can be watching some of the greatest actors, working with some of the greatest directors, and working with some of the greatest writers of the day, producing incredible art. But what I've come to accept about myself, Mark, is that I would rather watch idiots fail. Right? And that's what Moonfall was.
So I worked at I used to work at the BFI IMAX. I kind of it was quite a cool place. For the most part, it kind of operated a bit more like a theatre than a cinema, in that this is going to make me sound like a bit of a fucking snob, but it generally employed people who were themselves creatives.
Yeah.
So in there, you would meet, there was filmmakers, there was like visual artists, and it was a 0-hour contract, so it was like super easy to work around. It was an amazing job. Like, I absolutely adored that job. It's probably one of my favourite jobs I've ever had. But you do meet, like, there was one woman, a friend of mine, who like every year would go and just like volunteer at the Sundance Film Festival and shit like that, which is cool. But she had like, I don't want this to sound insulting because I'm not going to name her, but because I really like her, I've got a lot of respect for her. But her opinions on films were usually fairly snobby, which is fine. My opinions on things are very snobby as well. Do you know what I mean? It's fine. But I came in and I was like, we're going to watch Moonfall, and she was like, you are going to love it. She says, it is the fucking dumbest thing you have ever seen. And because it is so unapologetically fucking dumb, it kind of makes it amazing. Like, there isn't a thing, like, you're not going to sit there and be like, wow, this is bullshit. How come you can upload a virus on any computer? No, which is explained in a deleted scene. Go fuck yourselves. But it's like so insane that it's like you would care. This guy's an astronaut, right? And he saw a legit alien which killed his astronaut friend, and the problem is that he's going to be blamed for killing the other astronaut or something. Can't really remember. And it's like like surely, like if there's anyone qualified to sit in front of Congress and be like, "There's an alien, it's an astronaut." The Mexican UFO hearing. We'll get to Star Trek in a minute, James. But the Mexican UFO hearings that are happening at the moment, like I don't buy any of it. Like, quite frankly, like they're going to have to show me some serious fucking evidence. But if an astronaut sat in front of Congress and under oath said there are aliens and I have seen one, I'd be like, aliens exist.
I've got to say this as well. This is going to sound really snobby. Mexico's not one of the countries I will take that seriously from. There are certain nations, if they announce we've discovered aliens, like if France did it, I'd be like, okay, that's probably true. Right, but Mexico, I'm like, what's your angle?
No, I disagree, right? Because aliens, like, if aliens are coming to Earth and not really making themselves known, it's because they are observing us. Also, I need to slow down. I've lived in Glasgow for so long that I speak too quickly. I've noticed myself doing it on this podcast, so apologies. No comments said anything about that. I've taken that on myself. But if the aliens are here to observe us, then they would be, like, they're not doing it for a laugh. Do you know what I mean? They'd be making observations and taking it back and going, well, objectively, Scotland is better than England for this reason, blah, blah, blah. And, like, if they are able to, you know, if they can taste things, Mexican food is objectively the best food.
So you're saying that you'd expect the aliens to turn up in either A, Mexico, B, India, or C, Italy.
Yeah.
No, that's fair. Before we get into Star Trek, we should also note we are recording this before dispatches, so to cover ourselves before for all reactions, either what a shock, I didn't know that guy would do that, B, yeah, I knew exactly that guy would do that, and C, we would like to publicly distance ourselves from Duffy Cons.
D, it's impressive that Williams is continuing to get away with it.
And E, yeah, I knew it was Gervais. Anyway,
look, the episode is Ménage à Troi, right? It's a Luxanna Troi episode. Who gives a fuck?
Also, just quick point: if you're going to call an episode Ménage à Troi, and you're going to do it around this point in the series, and you do it as episode 71 and not episode 69, fuck you,
idiots.
Fuck you, TNG writers' room.
I think that Gervais is too much of, like, Gervais is too out about the fact that he is a complete cunt for him to have any skeletons.
Oh yeah, that's a fair point. I'll give you that.
Yeah, he's
a horrible person.
You can't go around getting the type of feedback that Ricky Gervais presumably gets, knowing that you have something that those people could find out about you.
All I'm going to say about Ricky Gervais is his hatred of trans people is nothing to do with protecting women, because if you Google it, he has never said a single thing about his friend Louis C.K. being sexually harassing women within the industry he works in, and he could stop it, and he doesn't care. He doesn't care about women. He just hates trans people. Anyway. But yeah, so it's a Luxanna Troi episode.
Yeah, so...
And a Wesley episode as well as your B story.
What happens on this one? So... Troi... Some...
Okay.
What's the plot of this one? I watched it yesterday.
There's a Ferengi who wants to marry
That's right.
Luxanna because he thinks her telepathic powers would be useful, and he fancies her. But beyond that, there is one important thing to talk about from this episode. There is a Ferengi doctor in this episode called Dr. Farrak, and he is played by an actor called Ethan Phillips.
Yep.
Now, Ethan
Star
Phillips...
Trek royalty, mate.
Yeah, if you don't know Ethan Phillips, he is this one Ferengi, and he is fucking Neelix. He is probably, I'm going to say, I'd say he's probably the Star Trek regular who has had to spend the most time in makeup.
Oh, yeah, because Neelix is a regular character because Jeffrey Combs is always in makeup, but he's not on it all the time.
Yeah.
Neelix is in essentially every episode. Have you watched Lower Decks? Yeah.
No, I haven't got around to it yet. I'm watching One Piece at the moment, which is really good. It's really enjoyable.
I'm going to spoil a little bit for you. So, Lower Decks might as well be called Mike McMahon's issues with previous episodes of Star Trek. Because the first episode of season 4 is about them taking Voyager back to Earth from its place in the Starship Museum.
Right, okay.
And it's all about a Tuvix situation.
Right, okay.
And as soon as that happened, I turned to Laura, who isn't as far ingrained, and I was like, oh, I bet this is just going to be half an hour of commentary on how Janeway murdered a person. And I wasn't disappointed.
There are several episodes of Voyager where and this is what I'm gonna say. My problem isn't with the meat of the story. It's that the episode doesn't seem to realise that the crew of Voyager are the bad guys. Because you could sell that story of Janeway has to kill this guy because she needs the information that she needs the information that Tuvok has to help get them home. And that's you could sell that, but the fact that you don't have anybody else in the crew really react to it as being a bad or negative thing, that's what does it. And Tuvok and Neelix there should have at least been an episode of them being weirdly conflicted over having been in their own individual being that just suffered essentially murder at the hands of Janeway, but also them being glad that they're back to... Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah, because that is brought up, to be fair, in this episode of Lower Decks, they do kind of approach both sides, because they are they were out in a Delta Quadrant, and they did need Tuvok back. Not so much Neelix, but they needed Tuvok back, for sure.
Yeah.
And now this has happened in the Alpha Quadrant, so, what's the ethical thing to do? And then there's lots of jokes about how, oh my god, there's a swift breeze in space, Voyager's gonna get crushed or whatever. Just how Voyager is just, the most useless ship in the fucking fleet.
Oh, man. The thing with Voyager is there's a TV show about how the crew of Voyager are rigidly sticking to the principles of the Federation, and how that conflicts with their attempting to get home, and that's a story you can tell. And then there's also a crew has to abandon the ethics of the Federation in order to get home, and that's also a story you can tell. And all I would have wanted from Voyager is it to pick one. And not alternate weekly. Right, and then each episode pretend that it's... Although it did give us the best Star Trek game, because if you haven't played Star Trek Elite Force...
it's great.
It's great. It's absolutely brilliant.
Star Trek Bridge Command is better, though.
Okay.
Because you get to choose what you... Basically, you get to be the captain, and if you're anything like me, you'll sit and say the commands out loud. Even though you're selecting with a mouse, weapons, target shields, I'll say that out loud. Here's some behind the scenes. In 2012, Ronald D. Moore remembered Gene Roddenberry performed a rewrite on Ménage à Troi and added a questionable description of fruit during the picnic scene on Beta Z. Quote, Mrs. Troi reaches into the picnic basket and brings out an oscoid, which is a long cylindrical piece of fruit with veins going down the side, and offers it to Riker to take a bite.
Okay, I have a question about something to
By
do
the way,
with.
just before you start that, I'm just going to preface everything that goes on, because we're 19 minutes in, so there'll be about 35 minutes left in this episode. If you think that this episode of this podcast is in any way going to revolve around the plot of this episode, you are sadly mistaken. We might pull back to it every now and again, but likelihood is we're going to go off on massive tangents. It's fucking Ménage à Troi. It's pretty funny, and Riker decks a guy after beating him at chess. That's the only things. Anyway, sorry, go on.
It's I'm gonna say that because like I say, the A plot in this is a Luxanna Troi story. The B plot is a Wesley story, and the antagonists are the Ferengi, who aren't interesting until Deep Space Nine, right? All that's interesting in this episode is we learn it's possible to beam somebody out of their clothes.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. But no, I had a genuine question, something that did occur to me, and I'm going to play a rare compliment to Luxanna Troi as a character. She is incredibly believable as Deanna Troi's mum.
Yeah, big time.
So now I have a question about that. Was Deanna cast specifically to look a bit like Miguel Roddenberry, so that Gene had an excuse for putting his wife in the show? Something he's done consistently through all Star Trek, or was it a happy coincidence?
I'd say it's more likely to be a happy coincidence, to be honest.
Yeah. Okay. But yeah, I was just thinking, like she very much looks like she can be.
Yeah.
It's her sis's mum. And I also like the relationship between them in this episode. I think finally Deanna has a bit of kickback where she's like, "Will you just fuck off?"
Yeah.
When Luxanna Troi is being incredibly sexist, where it's like, "I know you've got a career on the flagship of the Enterprise, but would you be more happy if you were a mother?"
Yeah. I looked into Beta Z Society after this episode, and the most interesting thing about them I found is that there's basically no one lies on Beta Z. There's no point. There's no point in trying to be duplicitous if people can read your mind at will.
Yeah.
So Betazoids. Yes, they are Betazoids. The planet is Beta Z.
It's Beta Z. Yeah.
They messed that up in the episode. Is that they always tell the truth, because there's just no point in hiding anything, which I think is an incredibly interesting plot for a film that isn't just about Ricky Gervais trying to convince you that religion is. I don't really know what the fucking point of that film was. Was that like Ricky Gervais? Because if you look at the Book of Mormon, like the Book of Mormon is obviously making fun of the Mormon religion and kind of religion in general, but yeah. Matt Stone and Trey Parker, as much as like if you're sitting there going, "I love Matt Stone and Trey Parker," they say it like it is. It means that you value the opinion of a stoned 16-year-old over any kind of fucking nuance. Because Matt Stone and Trey Parker have basically nothing to say. They just think everything is stupid.
Yeah.
But the one thing that they do is that I can't remember which is. I think it's Matt Stone. I think he's the one without glasses. Or maybe that's Trey Parker. It's one of them. But he's like the kind of main writer, and he's like, I can't be religious because my brain doesn't work that way. But which is a genuine thing. Like I have the same thing. Like I will never believe in God, because you will never get my brain to just be like, well, we have to look at the logic of the thing and the way that it works and blah blah blah. But at the end of it, it's okay. There's just a guy. There's a guy that just did all that stuff, right? I'm never going to work that way. But he says, like, this show seems like it's making fun of religion. It isn't. This is my love letter to religion, because I wish that I could have that. Ricky Gervais does not have that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He just thinks it's. I don't really get what the point of the invention of lying was.
Yeah.
Because like there's an episode about the Mormons. There's an episode of South Park, and it goes in on it, and it takes the piss, but it ends with the Mormon kid being like, "Okay, well, you don't believe in it, but I do, and so does my family, and it gives us joy, and it makes us good people. What's wrong with that?" And it's like, and
I do have a problem with that. Genuinely, like if we're gonna get into this, because fuck it. Do you know what? Let's use Ménage à Troi, because this is the episode that no one's gonna fucking listen to anyway. Let's just use this episode to get our hottest takes out of the way. I think that the world will be a better place when religion is abolished, because religion is about, in some ways. Oh man, this is going to get me cancelled. I think religion in some ways is about fostering an inherent incuriosity about the world.
Oh no, yeah, I'll give you that.
Yeah, like if you whatever you believe in, that's fine, right? I'll make fun of you behind your back, but if whatever you believe in, if you think that's the way it goes, like that's great. But all it does is tell me that you have already come to a conclusion. Yeah.
And the thing I will say, in addition, is that when it comes to the that episode of South Park specifically about the Mormons, that's a super superficial response, because as many people who have left the Mormon faith will tell you, it's actually an incredibly creepy and incredibly dangerous cult to be part of. So it's like there are problems. I got into a big conversation the other day with my mum. Now, my mum and I are very similar people. In more ways that we look exactly alike. Like I look like the fucking face app male version of her, right? And like we sound the same, we talk the same, we have the same syntax when we speak. It's actually quite bizarre. But she really believes in ghosts, and I don't. And we were sitting in the theatre the other day, and at halftime when my mum and I talk, sometimes it sounds like we're having a fight, but it's not. That's just how we communicate with each other. And Laura was literally in the middle, and my mum was like, "I can't believe you don't have an open mind about ghosts." And I'm like, "I do have an open mind about ghosts, and that's why I don't believe in them." yeah. That's the point. Yeah. Like if you could bring me, like this is the thing as well. I think that. This is something that a lot of people don't realise. I consider myself a fairly rational person. I don't believe in a lot of bullshit. But if you were to bring me any form of irrefutable proof, something that would convince me, I wouldn't be angry that I'd been wrong. I would be delighted. I'd be excited that a new thing was real. Yeah. And also, it's like, if you could convince, like, if I met like the Vampire Slayer and it turned out the entire world of demons and vampires and all of that was real, it's like that'd be what I'd be doing then. That would be what, because I'd be like, oh, this is much cooler. Magic is real. Magic. Yeah. Because I wrote a pilot script that was well, you've read it. It's basically, what if Buffy saved the world when she was 19 and now she's 35 and just works in the gig economy as a monster killer? I think it's great. But the pilot is about her kind of finding a new assistant, as pilots should go. And I sent it to someone to be like, who's like a very well established kind of comedy writer and stuff. I said, can you give this a once over and let me get it back? And he gave it back, and he says, one of the things I really hate about it is at one point, the Buffy character is like, oh, this is my magic jacket. It has all my things in it. And the other character went, wait, so magic's real as well? And he said, take that out. I hate it when that happens. And I'm like, but that's exactly how you would react. That's like quite a realistic, oh, magic's real. Oh, tell me more about that. Because like I could very easily believe that we live in a universe where ghosts exist, but where magic doesn't. Yeah. So if ghosts were revealed to be real, I'd be like, all right. I'm fully prepared to believe that there is a scientific explanation for ghosts. But here's the thing: it would need to be a scientific explanation for observable phenomena, which no one has ever shown me. Like, until I've observed the phenomena, I'm not going to start trying to work out what the explanation for it is.
And then there's also the other side, which is that if science ever captures like fully provable existence of ghosts, we have to be ready to then get into, as Captain Jack, as Father Jack would say, it's an ecumenical matter, because proof of the existence of ghosts is not the same as proving that ghosts are the spirits of dead people.
Yeah.
And so we'd have to reconcile with that, because you'd be people who'd be like, well, there definitely is an afterlife, and I'd be like, well, no, that's like saying that mushrooms exist, therefore magic powers must be real because you associate those two together with Super Mario, which is a story that's been made up by some guy.
Years ago, I was working on a bit of a short story science fiction, and it was the idea was that there is a weird energy cloud that it exists in a way that human beings cannot currently detect, and it is orbiting the sun at more or less the exact same rate as the Earth, and they occasionally pass through each other, and that captures like images and stuff that's happening, and then it replays them when it goes through again, and that's what ghosts are. Right now, that could be a thing that happened, and it doesn't mean that therefore ghosts are the spirits of the dead. You know, it's like that's it's if they were real. But this is the thing as well. I'm going to say something. I don't believe in any of this stuff. But at some point in my life, I am going to go to the Pacific Midwest and look for Bigfoot. And it's not because I believe Bigfoot is real, but it's if I'm ever in that area, that's the place where I'm most likely to see a Bigfoot.
Yeah, it's
so I'll give it a go.
It's the same thing as I think belief in ghosts is belief in nonsense. But by God, if it's dark and I hear a noise, I'm still terrified of ghosts.
Well, your biggest fear is werewolves, isn't it? Which
yes, weird, isn't it? Yeah, I am. If you're catching up on this, I have like I mean, obviously, a fear of werewolves is irrational to begin with. But I have like a truly bizarre. I think werewolves are by far the scariest thing. And I don't really know why. No, vampires are sexy. Werewolves very rarely want to fuck you.
The problem is, I think this is the problem. I think when people think of vampires, I think a lot of them think of like, you know, Angel and Spike. Whereas my tastes are more, I think, Nosferatu, and that's not sexy. That's like he's got a mouthful of needles. Oh, that might be your thing. I don't know. If you look like a Nosferatu, maybe you'll find love. But I don't want to be one of you.
So Riker and Troy and Luxanna get kidnapped by the Ferengis.
Yeah.
And put in a jail cell next to the chess area.
Yeah. Where else do you have your chess area?
Yeah, exactly. And the Ferengi is annoyed that Riker beat him at chess.
Yeah.
But Riker finds it difficult to play chess from his prison cell, which is a Celtic song. That's for no one. By a lonely prison wall, Queen to night 3. So the Ferengi lets him out. And the Ferengi's like, oh, you think I'm an idiot? Like, you really think this is going to work? You think I'm going to let you out? And then you pretend to come and play, and then you just knock me the fuck out. Yeah, all right. Spin me another one, William. And then Will Riker's like, no, that's not what's going to happen. Then of course it cuts away to Picard, and then back, and there's a Ferengi on the floor because he's an idiot.
Yeah.
And he let Riker out. Why would you ever do that?
Yeah. I've got an interesting thing to talk about, but from this episode, but not based on this episode. So there's a point where they don't know where the Ferengi ship's gone, and Geordie's talking to Picard, and he goes, "Well, they're almost as fast as the Enterprise."
Yeah.
And I've just got their name, and is Starfleet Superman? In that, they are usually the most powerful force in any circumstance that they encounter. Like, you have to throw some really, really over... Like, Q can, like, mess with Starfleet. That's like throwing, like, Mixus Pidalic at Superman. And by that, I don't mean that as an insult, because if you think Superman being overpowered means that he's not a good character, I'm sorry that you've not read good Superman
You don't understand
comics.
Superman, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
but
because something is going to happen 2 podcasts from now
yeah.
that puts Starfleet in their place so badly that they never stop talking about it.
Yeah.
And that thematically, that can only happen to a force that basically feels itself invincible.
I was going to say, what is going to occur is the Doomsday. If my Superman analogy is what you're following, and what I was going to say is that and this is going to be something that's going to annoy people who don't like Superman. So I'm going to explain this. Starfleet being the most powerful thing in any situation is what makes Starfleet interesting, because the question isn't are they going to be able to do this, it's how, and it's how are they going to be able to do this in the ethically correct fashion, which is the correct thing with like Superman. Like Superman, you aren't like, oh, how's he going to solve this? It's like, no, how's he going to do this where no one dies and he can hopefully convince someone that's being bad that they've made a mistake. And they should reconsider.
Exactly. Like the Enterprise could blow anything out the fucking water. Do you know what I mean? So,
there's regularly people go like, oh, what would win the fight? Like the Death Star or the an Imperial Star Destroyer or the Enterprise, and it's like, oh, it's the Enterprise. Hands down by 1,000,000 miles. No way.
It's small enough to figure out where that fucking vent cover is, and the crew is so well oiled that they can't just go. They'll just do it. Like of course. Like the Enterprise could take on the Death Star, no issue, mate.
Yeah. Oh, we need. There's the whole deck. Should we fire a photon torpedo down there, or I'll send data?
Because Star Trek at its core, and this is why Star Trek is timeless, as well as Star Trek obviously appeals quite a lot to the fringes of society, or like as we were discussing earlier, like pop culture generations, like the next generation, these people aren't the fringe; they're almost kind of the mainstream, which is kind of the neuro diverse community, because it's literally a bunch of people who set aside emotion and get together as smart people to use their brains to solve problems, and that's all it is. That's all Star Trek is, and in that sentence, Star Trek is smart people using their brains to solve problems. We can still have emotion, we can still have conflict, because that's covered by the word people.
Yeah. And we can still have what makes Star Trek great, which is the moral questions, because that's covered by problems. It's
I read a book on negotiation by a guy who was an FBI hostage negotiator, and he said the best advice I can give you about negotiation is that don't ever see the other person as the enemy. The situation is the enemy, and you and the other person have to solve it together.
Okay,
which is a really nice way of looking at things. Can't do that with a Borg.
on a slightly tangential note, just because I want to drop it in on the record, if you are one of the people who thinks Superman is boring because he's overpowered, but also insists that Batman would win every fight, you're an idiot,
Yeah.
If he'd win every fight, Batman is by definition overpowered and therefore not interesting. What makes Batman interesting is the fact that the Flash could, if the Batman and Flash had a fight, Flash could travel back in time and stop Batman's parents getting shot, and then Batman doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, do you know what? We're 39 minutes in. At this point, we've already scared everybody off because we're two fucking white guys in our 30s being like, if you think ghosts are real, it's because you're an idiot. So fucking, do you know what? Let's just hit out with all our worst takes. Gen Z don't understand comedy because they think that all of The Simpsons is basically okay. Idiots.
I personally wish COVID had been more devastating to the over 50s.
I mean, I don't want to go on record saying that, so I won't.
It was when it kicked in. It's like, it's going to kill everyone over 50. I was like, oh no, I'll get a house and have to rejoin the EU.
What a disaster. What a disaster. The worst generation in history who've been spent the last 20 years being absolutely catered to, that everything that they think is the right way to be has a dissenting opinion on what's fucking safe and helpful in a situation.
Wesley gets promoted.
Yes, I'm quite excited about that because Laura and I, because Picard is like Picard, because Wesley solves this situation essentially. Wesley finds the Riker.
In doing so, Riker sends a message, but only Wesley catches it, and in doing so, Wesley misses his ride to go take the oral exam for Starfleet, which apparently you can't do via subspace on the comm system.
Via Zoom.
Yeah. And also in this episode, Wesley has to deal with the fact that if he goes to the academy, when he eventually becomes an ensign, he, one, might not get sent back to the Enterprise, and two, Picard might not even be in charge of the Enterprise.
Yeah.
Like, everybody might have moved around. They has to deal with that. And Wesley's a bit torn by that because Wesley's forgotten that he's in an incredibly episodic show. Like, if he was on Deep Space Nine, there's a chance that the people might not be there. Like, if he was on Discovery, that crew's going to change drastically.
They're going to time travel 1,000 years specifically to get rid of him.
Yeah, but as it is, no, everyone will be in the same place. Tasha's already left.
Yeah.
O'Brien will be gone. O'Brien will be gone.
Wesley's drinking partner. So Picard field promotes him. Now,
from acting ensign to ensign.
Now, Laura was like, how can he do that? 'Cause surely he needs to go to school. And it's like, and I said, well, I guess it kind of makes sense that any captain does have the power to do that. But most captains would be like, I'm not promoting some kid. That's what Starfleet Academy exists because captains have the power to do that and simply choose not to because most children are psychopathic morons. But Wesley is very clever, so it's worth getting him to be an ensign. And Picard was told by essentially a god being that Wesley is going to be the world's greatest accelerationist or something.
Yeah, I mean, he's not. What actually happens is he ends up going off with the aliens in later series and doesn't, because of their nomadic and non-interference policy, he doesn't actually assist the advancement of the human race at all. It's the same alien who told Picard that he was going to be special, who then removes him from the human civilization.
Luckily, Bev replaces him with a much, much sexier son.
Yeah, and he has to go to the academy. Goes through quick, but he still has to go.
Yeah.
Before he gets to sit next to Seven on the Enterprise.
Captain Seven, yeah.
Which just goes to show that the Titan, which it was called before, which was what's his face.
That's Riker's ship.
Yeah, that's and that's the ship that what's his face set up, not Metalis. That ship doesn't matter. because it was only in 2 crap series of Picard, and not one. Man, Picard season 3. I just love it. I saw somebody kicking off about it the other day. Right, I'm going to talk about this because this annoyed me, and they were talking about how they don't like nostalgia in general, and they were slagging it off. And I was going to say something about it, which was, I agree 100% in general. The nostalgia addiction of current culture is crippling. It's one of the reasons that I am going to say this right now. If you listen to this, on the 29th of September, there is a movie coming out called The Creator. It is not based on an existing IP. It is an interesting science fiction movie that they seem to have spent a lot of money on. Go see that, or only have yourself to blame. Right? Right.
Yeah.
Right. But here's the thing. Star Trek The Next Generation fans, specifically Next Generation fans, have never gotten any nostalgia. The first Star Trek Next Generation movie, they destroyed the Enterprise. So then all of the rest of the movies were on some other ship that I didn't care about. Then they did 2 seasons of Picard where we don't go back to it. And then after they did, so they did Deep Space Nine and TNG, like that era. And Voyager. Once that finished, the next thing was they did Enterprise, and then after that, everything's been a reboot set around the Kirk era.
Yeah.
Or just before, or some version of that. I get in general I don't like nostalgia, but when you consider that Picard Season 3 is the only nostalgia that TNG fans have ever been given,
yeah,
I think it's acceptable.
I have conflicted feelings about the Star Wars sequels.
Right.
And I include The Mandalorian in that because it's they're all just nostalgia fest. They are on one hand, yeah. But do you know what period of time I really don't care about anymore? The time period between episode 3 and episode 4. Because I did massively care about that. And then you made Andor, and it was how are you going to improve on this? How are you going to give us anything about a period of tyranny and rebellion any better than this? So now I don't give a fuck. What I really give a fuck about is the post-Return of the Jedi period.
Yeah. Well, I don't understand. I saw somebody say something that I really agree with, which was somebody said, if you were going to make a Star Trek series, somebody gave you your rights to make it, what time period it would be set in? And their response was, it wouldn't matter.
Yep.
Because I wouldn't be relying on links to stuff from previous series.
The only thing that would come into my head about that is that I know that things like the holodeck don't come in until the TNG era.
Yeah, that's it.
So I would just be I will set it however many years after TNG Patrick Stewart currently is. Because if I want to be do you know what? Just for a laugh, we'll have Admiral Crusher show up. To give an award to someone. But other than that, this crew is going to be going out boldly where no one has gone before to seek out new life and new civilizations.
The only way I would be interested in something that was like a follow-up series is I would like to see a starship from Starfleet that was in charge of the mission to go back to the Delta Quadrant and essentially undo all the damage that Janeway did.
Yeah, I'd watch that.
I also think that Voyager should have ended without them getting home. I think the final episode should have been ended with a point where it was set 500 years in the future, and it was the Delta Quadrant Federation meeting up with the existing Federation. Is we were founded by Janeway from yours, and we all got together, so now we can join together.
That's how Stargate Universe ends.
Is it?
Yeah. Stargate Universe ends with them basically figuring out that there's no way for them to get back to Earth, so they just settle on a planet and just.
Oh, right.
And then the camera. It's like a little settlement. It's been a long time since I've seen it, but it's it's like a little settlement, and then the camera sort of zooms out, and as the camera zooms out, it starts doing a time lapse until it's like a city civilization.
Right. That's
because there's like hundreds of people on the whatever the fuck the name of the ship was from Stargate Universe. There was like hundreds of people on it, so they could make a civilization from it.
I hope they recorded a video. Like, because I would hate to think that the people living in that city are like, well, yeah, they say the stories go, they landed in a spaceship. And it's been like, no, we've got the tape, we've got the ship.
Well, isn't that literally the plot of Battlestar Galactica? Is that they left Earth so long ago that Earth is now a legend, or that they left Earth so long ago that Earth has had a life cycle, and humans are yet to evolve, or something? I can't really remember the end of that.
Right, yeah, so it ends with them arriving on a Earth pre-civilization. And I don't know to what extent that is that they are originally from Earth or if they just happened across it. Yeah. So it's unclear. Battlestar Galactica is a great show, but it's also the people who wrote it have admitted that they were making up as they go along. And there are a few times when what the audience thought might be happening is like 20 times more interesting than what the writers came up with. Yeah. Because there's like a bit where those like characters realise they're Cylons, and it's like that doesn't make any logical sense unless they've been Cylons for years, which they couldn't have been, or they've been replaced, or they don't know it. Or as somebody who came up online was, what if being Cylon is sexually transmitted? Yeah. I was like, okay, that'd be great, but it wasn't that. Yeah. What else? All I've got in my notes really is take any notes. I've got Wesley was going to go fuck he's staying. Picard does some sort of Shakespeare-y stuff.
That was cool.
Yeah. It's not an important episode. The thing is, it's trying to be a comedy episode, I think, but it's not even all that funny. Yeah. Oh. There's a bit where Picard's as well, like looking out the window, and because they're mapping a nebula, and that's why they don't know that Riker's been kidnapped, because they can't communicate from inside the nebula. And he's like, "Oh, it's beautiful," and it gives all the things, but it's just a fucking view screen, like view of some stars.
Yeah.
And all I could think was like, right, I'm not gonna bash older Star Trek shows for doing what they could with the budget they had, but all I could think is, if I was watching a Strange New Worlds episode and Pike was going to tell me how beautiful space was, there'd be something outside happening that was fucking incredible.
I mean, they did it. They've done the definitive moment of that, which is at the end of Picard season 3 episode 4, with the when they're in this sort of womb, this space womb thing, and then it hatches and all the jellyfish come out. And it's just this wonderful moment with beautiful music, and then just Bev says to seek out new life. Perfect, like chills, actual chills.
So there's a thing that's floating around for years. So Enterprise ends with basically the Federation being formed.
Yeah.
And part of the thing is that we hear in that is that. Part of how it ends is that Archer needs to give a speech, and the joke is that it cuts off and the speech doesn't get heard, and that speech has been mentioned and referenced multiple times in Star Trek, but it's never actually been like repeated in the universe what it is. I've always chosen to believe that speech is. These are the voyages of to seek out new life.
I don't think so. Because Zephram Cochrane does say that at one point in Enterprise. Yeah. There's a bit where they're I think it might be the forming of the Federation. But there's a bit where they're all watching a view screen of Zephram Cochrane. He's like a little bit older. And he's the one who says, "We will go boldly where no one has gone before, and to seek out new life and new civilization." I think he says "man." I think he very specifically says "man."
Right,
but
okay.
but that so the Enterprise speech does come from Cochrane. No, it's a good idea though. Like to the point where talking about fan service, sometimes you should leave things up to your fans' imaginations, and like the idea that Archer once gave a speech that we never get to hear, the fans going, well, if anything, we have heard that more than anything else.
Yeah,
is clever, but it doesn't go that way.
Yeah, oh, damn.
Yeah.
But yeah,
that's it. It's the first time that anyone uses the Cochrane unit of measurement to measure subspace distances or something.
Yeah.
Other than that, who gives a shit? Skip this one.
Yeah, Wesley ends up in uniform.
Yeah.
Meaning Troi is the only person on the bridge who's not properly dressed. For reasons.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. You could probably skip every Luxanna Troi episode of Star Trek and it wouldn't negatively affect your viewing.
This one's alright. Yeah.
Majel Roddenberry is the voice of the computer. Should be good enough.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Right.
Bye.
Bye.